For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Who is it that overcomes the world except the one who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? Well, this passage from 1 John chapter 5, these are verses 4 and 5, some of which we will be studying tonight here at the building in the Wilds Fellowship Hall at 6:30 p.m. These verses are some of these verses that I spent some time over the last couple of weeks studying and scratching my head about and opening up the commentaries and looking over some of my old notes on this and going back to the Greek New Testament and scrutinizing what these words meant. I spent all this time analyzing and overanalyzing and scrutinizing, and now I've reached a conclusion that these verses are not primarily to be scrutinized and analyzed and over-examined. These verses are to be realized. You see, these words that we've just read, we're going to study in Bible class tonight. You're welcome to study them at home as well. These words here from 1 John chapter 5 are some of the most powerful words that have ever been spoken. That we, through our faith in Jesus Christ, have overcome the world. Well, what are the implications of that? What exactly does that mean? Is that something that we can read with a yawn, or is the fact that God has given us the victory through Jesus Christ, does that mean something? How does that affect the way that we live our lives? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight as we conclude our study, beloved, from 1 John. 1 John chapter 5, of course, brings to fruition so much of what Paul and I have been discussing over the last few weeks here. We're talking about how obeying the commands of God ought to be liberating rather than burdensome. What does it look like to live out the commands that God has given us with love? Whereas we find this fact here that's noted in 1 John chapter 5 that his commands are not burdensome. Unfortunately, for so many of us, it often feels like walking the walk of faith feels like a burden to bear. And this is what I talked about on Sunday morning as well. What do we do with our burdens? And how can we walk a walk of faith that is a walk of love rather than some sort of heavy burden on our shoulders? Well, I truly believe the key to that is right here in 1 John chapter 5. You see that word, overcome the world. That word that's a key word here in 1 John 5 is the same word from which we get our fancy shoes of today's world. The shoes, that'll help you to dunk a basketball, that is Nike. Well, this word, victory, overcome, that is the very same word from which this famous shoe company has derived its name. Unfortunately for them, they don't know what they're missing. We as Christians have the real victory through Jesus Christ. We're going to talk about that tonight and so much more. We're going to talk about the ramifications of overcoming the world through faith. What exactly does that mean? Yes, we'll scrutinize it some so that hopefully we can live it out this week. We're going to talk about the connection between obedience and love. We're talking about the assurances that we have for the validity of our faith and how that ought to propel us into loving obedience. You see, the church that John is writing to is dejected. They're broken. They're confused. They've got a feeling of abandonment. They're questioning what they've been taught. They're worried. The trust issues of, well, is anybody else going to walk out on us? Are the things that I've been taught really true? It's a very uncertain, unsure church. And this victory that we're talking about through Jesus Christ, this gives us assurance, doesn't it? We're talking about a couple of tricky verses as well tonight. What is it that John is dealing with when he talks about the sin that leads unto death or sins that do not lead unto death? We'll discuss those as well as this puzzling little concluding remark. Verse 21, little children, keep yourselves from idols. All of that on the docket for this evening. I hope that you're following along at home and studying these things as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be glad to discuss them with you no matter where you are. God bless.